Yeah, I've always loved Power Girl. I don't know why. Maybe it probably is the.
I think I know why, Jamie. Right, let's start, shall we? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Jamie, Your Film Taste Sucks. I am Ben. I'm joined by Jamie.
Hello.
And I'm also joined by our guest, Charlie, who was on the previous Zack Snyder episode, as well as the Lovecraft episode.
Hey. Good to see you again.
And today we are talking about, can Zack Snyder save the Justice League? Now we are talking about, did Zack Snyder save the Justice League? I will cut through everything else straight to the chase. I think in every possible way, it was an improvement over the Whedon film. I think that there were problems with it. A lot of those problems, I think, Snyder couldn't have fixed with a cut anyway. A lot of them were to do with kind of its position in the series, and kind of where some elements were rushed, and those elements were outside the film. But I think we should get into the nitty-gritty of it. This will have a lot of spoilers about the film, and the film is there are a few twists in it that weren't in the original, but if you've seen the original, you get the gist. But yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. What do you think, Charlie?
I loved it. That was what I was expecting from a Zack Snyder Justice League. When I saw what he had planned years and years ago, he always said it was going to be 5 films. You couldn't go into the mid-arc without having everything you had, those beats all there. And it just worked. The set pieces, the design. I don't know why Whedon changed Steppenwolf. Like, that was a brilliant CG model.
I believe that was after the Snyder Cut was put back on track, because those announcements came out much later of what Steppenwolf. Maybe he changed it because obviously there was a few months after it was announced where it went back into production, didn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe the Steppenwolf, but yeah, he has sort of this living armor look to him, where he's kind of all his armor moves independently, and it is quite a nice visual feast. All of it is, especially the paratroopers kind of look like the meld of man and machine. Everything just it visually it just looks better than its predecessor. I think if you break it down, you look at it, the sound design was better. The editing was better. It's kind of it just sort of was a step up from what the previous cut was. The previous cut did set the bar quite low, to be fair. Jamie, what about you?
So obviously, before we get into anything too personal, because I'm clearly going to be the dissenter here, obviously, no disrespect to Zack Snyder and the tragedy he went through that caused him to drop out of this project in the first place. Obviously, everything I'm about to say is, with that full respect to that. So to sum up what Justice League is, because Zack Snyder made a statement about how he wanted to be different with DC. He didn't want to copy Marvel. He didn't want to copy. He wanted to do differently. So this is a film in which Batman, assembles a team of superheroes to go on a quest to track down the Infinity Stones, Mother Boxers, to fight a space warlord called Thanos, Darkseid. See what I mean? Basically, yes, before anyone comes at me, I know that in the comics, Darkseid came first. I know.
In fact, all these elements were DC elements far before they were Marvel elements.
I just wanted to get that joke in there. Planned that joke for 2 days. Clearly Marvel and DC have a very long history together of ripping one another off.
Yes.
To the point where the films are inevitably going to rip each other off as well.
But the Justice League would have come out before, it would have come out before Infinity War, would it?
Yeah.
Yes, but Thanos was already established in the universe at the end of it.
Yeah, but he already existed within the Marvel comics as well. I mean,
exactly.
It was going to happen that some big alien was going to be the enemy. Personally, I prefer the design of Darkseid to Thanos. He kind of looks like Grimace.
In terms of this particular film, the Snyder Cut, it's done a remarkable thing. which is I watched it before you. You two have just watched it today. I think?
Literally just
finished watching it.
So I watched it the day it came out, and the further away I'm getting from having seen it, the more I hate it. If we'd have done this podcast Thursday night, I would have been more like happy with it. But no, to be fair, I'm not saying it's terrible. It's not. I know we like me to make sweeping statements, but it's not terrible. It does improve on a lot of ways from the Whedon cut, or as people on the internet are calling it, Justice League. But I don't think it improves enough to actually have been worth all this trouble of coming out. And it certainly does not deserve to be as obnoxiously long as it is. It's the same film, but longer and more self-indulgent is my basic opinion.
You say self-indulgent, I think more fleshed out. There's every character kind of gets the issue I was talking about, where I said that the issue is kind of out of Zack's hand, in that the characters didn't actually have enough time to establish themselves, so they need the establishing within the film. That is kind of a problem in sort of where they've gone straight to Justice League as opposed to doing individual films. But that would have been very Marvel-y.
The real criminal here is Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
I want to be clear here because I'm about to defend Joss Whedon real quick. As I understand it from Charlie when he was last on doing Zack Snyder Save Justice League, there's only 2 new scenes he shot, which was Martian Manhunter and the Joker. Yeah, everything else already existed. He's just re-edited it.
Yeah. That's correct.
So does that mean Joss Whedon got given a 4-hour-long film and told, here, cut this down to 2 hours? Because in that case, I can honestly say I probably would have made all the same cuts Joss Whedon made.
He actually got given a 5-hour cut.
And told to cut down to 2 hours.
Correct. And then, when he cut down to 2 hours, he then added in his own Jossisms in reshoots.
Sort of, a lot of reshoots, which kind of...
Which some don't work.
Every choice that Joss made, there's very few that I thought Joss's versions were better, because I've seen them close enough to each other that I was like, oh wait a second, they've done that differently. Or always, the dialogue is very. I mean, obviously one is going to be very Jossian, one is very Snyderian, and personally, I preferred Snyder's dialogue, his characterizations. It just feels a lot more. It does feel unique, the film itself. I know obviously the plot elements are very there's nothing new in the actual plot elements, but the characterizations and it isn't your typical superhero film in the way that it oozes personality and it oozes creativity and it oozes identity, whereas Marvel films feel hot off the Disney press. They all feel very much. There's obviously like Guardians of the Galaxy are ones where the directors have kind of been allowed to put their own little inflection on it, but the majority of them do kind of feel, that they are just kind of they're mass produced for a broad audience. Whereas this is something where it does ooze identity, and I think the reason that I even if I didn't enjoy this film, I would still be quite happy that it exists, simply because this could be the battle horn for the return of the auteur director in the AAA industry. AAA, sorry, that's the video game term, but in the big industry, could be seeing the return of directors having more control over the product that leaves the studio, which I think we should all be happy about. My boy Eddie Wright, and I made sure to get Edgar Wright out as quickly as possible, kicked off Ant-Man, and I my heart of heart know that Edgar Wright has never done a bad film, and if he has creative differences, it's because he was trying to do something that was dripped with too much personality for this kind of beige, sanded down MCU, and Ant-Man was exactly that. It was kind of this just another generic film in the ongoing cog that is the cinematic universe. Justice League is a breath of fresh air.
I have to disagree on one thing you said, and this probably explains a lot why I don't like it, because I'd like to point out, because I'm sure at some point, because I've seen how passionate people are about this film, I don't know if has anyone seen the conspiracy theories that are going round?
I've completely
haven't.
distanced myself from any reviews or anything because I wanted to go into it completely unbiased.
There is a conspiracy theory I've seen multiple times. People think Joss Whedon was sent by Disney to intentionally ruin the film.
I said that while we were watching it. I was like, wouldn't it be funny if he tried to ruin it because he's in with Disney?
But so there is actually quite a lot I want to say. The first thing I'm going to say, and this will because I do like this one, and say, yeah, I know I'm probably going to get death threats for this. I'd like to point out I'm not a Marvel shill. Batman is my favorite superhero. Well, out of Marvel and DC, I actually prefer The Darkness that Top Cow do, which is an amazing series. But out of all the main superheroes, Batman is my favorite. My biggest problem with DC is everything's too overpowered. But anyway, the big thing I disagree with what you've just said, Benton. No, I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing for auteurs to return auteur filmmaking. What I disagree with is your referral to Zack Snyder as an auteur. Because to me, and this is why in a way I was doomed to hate this, I don't like Zack Snyder films. With the exception of Dawn of the Dead, which was his first film, I believe.
Yeah.
I've never seen a Zack Snyder film I liked. To me, he's the same kind of director as Michael Bay. His films are very visual. And one of the things
But Michael Bay's aren't visually pleasing either. They're just an eye fucked from start to finish.
Maybe he's a bit better than Michael Bay, but I've got a list of good and bad points because I'm trying to be balanced. And one of my good points is, yeah, it looks a lot nicer. All the fight scenes in particular look much nicer.
They're cut better. They're far easier on the eye to follow. The whole film is edited better than Justice League, the original was. The
biggest improvement for me was in the evil Superman fight.
Yes,
that's the one that's benefited the most, but the final fight with Steppenwolf has benefited a lot as well. But for me, the one that benefited most was Evil Superman.
They keep him. There's that element where he beats the ever-loving shit out of Steppenwolf, kind of to the point, because obviously when they brought him back in the original film, it's kind of like, and he's back and everyone's happy at the end. Whereas this one's kind of got that underlying something might be wrong with him.
Yeah,
I liked the music choice. Where, in the Justice League 2017, when the evil Superman's there, they've got that really ominous strings playing, and you're like, oh, this is weird. But when you've actually got it in this version, it's hopeful. You're like, oh, Superman's back. You don't see it coming.
Yeah. For me, he's very visually pleasing, but there's two. I was actually live. I was texting a friend who was also watching it while it was on, because I'm not going to lie, it was not holding my interest at all. Two things I think Zack Snyder doesn't understand. One is subtlety, and the second is depth. For me personally, I still don't give a fuck about these characters. And one of my good points, because I do want to be fair before I get onto my long list of bad points, I want the one moment where I would say it actually had me, I sort of perked up from my seat and was like, oh, was quite near the end. There's a moment in the final battle where the Flash gets shot.
Yes.
And I did stand, like, I sat on the edge of my seat at that point. I was like, oh, that really caught my attention. It was very well acted by Ezra Miller. Zack Snyder built it up in the correct way. I don't like them using the WandaVision fucking rewind time to get the Infinity Stone.
WandaVision didn't come out when they did that.
No, not the show WandaVision. I mean, Wanda and Vision.
Yeah, but she still had
that. Still wouldn't have happened when he shot that.
That was 2016. When he filmed it, it would have been 2015-16.
True, but I just didn't like it. I'm sure people who've read The Flash, it probably made more sense to them. I know he can reverse time, but
they do hint to it. They hint to it when he's running, because they hint it in Batman v Superman, and then when he's running at the box and it falls into the water and then it slowly starts to come out of the water, they were hinting at it. So it's not like it came out of nowhere. It's not like the old Superman film where he suddenly just flies around the planet.
No, it didn't come out of nowhere, but am I right in thinking... See, it's actually quite hard to remember. I've forgotten a lot of the film already, and I only watched it Thursday night. Doesn't he get vaporized and then somehow reverses time?
No, he's just outside of the blast,
right?
And then he starts speeding up. But everyone else is like vaporized.
I think I know what you're saying with, and I think one of my biggest problems with Zack is that he is a risk taker, which works when the risks pay off, but a lot of the times the risks don't pay off. A risk that pays off was, casting Ben Affleck as Batman. He got a lot of flack for that, but Ben Affleck is after this still maintains position as my favorite Batman. There's the bit where he jumps in the ship, he jumps down and hits the lights, and it all goes dark, and you see the outline of the armor. And just obviously his acting and kind of how he portrays both Bruce Wayne and Batman. Love it. That's one of those risks that really paid off. The Joker, putting the Joker in, that was the scene that dragged the most for me, was the discussion between him and the Joker was just pulling teeth.
This was a point I was going to leave to the very end, but one of my biggest bad points is that you realize the film ends and then carries on for half an hour.
That's an epilogue at the end of the day.
With pointless... Because the thing is, granted, okay, apparently it's going to get turned around now, but as we stand at the moment, Cavill and Affleck are out. Justice League 2 is never happening.
Cavill said he will jump at the opportunity to don the cape again.
Cavill isn't
Affleck has never... Affleck is
Which I'm still
kind of in.
About, because Zack Snyder, I don't know if anyone's read it, Zack Snyder, obviously thinking it wasn't going to happen, has announced everything he's doing in Justice League 2 and 3, and it sounds atrocious. It sounds like he does not understand the character of Batman at all. Batman works because he does not have superpowers. Don't give him superpowers. But that Joker scene, honestly, is so bad, it stinks. I was getting to a point where I was enjoying the film. That scene stains the film. Honestly, I'm begging Warner Brothers, if they're listening, recast Jared Leto.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that recast Amber Heard.
He was worse here than Suicide Squad. Don't get me wrong, I don't like Gangster Joker, but at least he made an acting choice. In this, he literally just felt like a black hole of charisma. Like he just felt like a blank slate. And that laugh,
it's really weird. He breaks into his regular voice like halfway through a line as well. It just, whatever the hell he was going for. It's one of these things where I was saying, like, he's a risk taker. And it's the same with Superman snapping Zod's neck. That is a huge risk to take that didn't pay off. I think there was much better ways they could have gone about it. The Martha incident is another risk that didn't pay off. There's things where I think maybe he needs a couple of no men, like the same issue George Lucas had on with the prequel trilogy. You need someone to kind of bounce that off and say, no, that's a bad idea, because he does do lots of good. Also, he needs to ease off the slow-mo button. Jesus Christ, please.
You might have got a 3-hour film if the slow-mo.
Yeah, there's that football game. Yeah, I think we were already sick of the slow-mo by the time we reached the football game.
I liked the slow-mo with the mum because you could really like capture the emotion on that, and then the pan to the dad's seat. But if they kept the football game going and then a bit of slow-mo there.
There's a lot of clever visual storytelling as well, where, for instance, she's cheering for him, and we know it's his mum, and then the seat next to him next to her is empty. And in those moments, the chemistry between Cyborg and his mother was actually quite touching. It's quite sad how much he believed in him and how absent his father was. All the bulk, in my opinion, everything that they gave to the characters that had been gouged out in the Whedon cut was necessary simply because it humanized them. Like the thing that he does when he gives her the random woman that's like struggling in debt, when he gives her, that huge injection of money, stuff like that is just really... He
didn't need to show that. He could have done it but it was a good thing that he did show it.
Exactly, and it sort of humanized him, and Cyborg really was the one that was shafted the most by the cut. And kind of giving him a lot more sort of emotional depth and kind of who he is and why he's there, which obviously none of them got in the Justice League thing, which you'd think the executives would look at this issue and say, all right, we're going to cut this 4-hour film down. The characters are already unknown. We're giving you even less time to like them. But I think everything was done better, asterisks, this time round, because it was just a lot less. Also, Whedon started that whole trend of playing to the camera, this thing that plagues the fucking MCU, where every scene needs to have a point where someone plays it to the camera, basically. And it's like watching it's watching actors do a comedy routine. It's not watching characters. And when you actually see the side by sides of what Whedon did and what Zack did, there is a hell of a lot of that. In fact, it's absent. There is humor, there is some levity. Not all of it lands, but it's nice that it doesn't feel like it's actors playing the camera. It feels like characters trying to make light of a bad situation, or characters trying to bond with each other, rather than just get the audience to get a quick chuckle kind of thing.
The best joke in the whole film is still the "What's your superpower again?"
I'm rich.
That is the best joke.
And that was Zack. That was, I didn't realize that. I thought that was a Joss line, but that is Zack Snyder.
There are two things that I think the Whedon cut did better, which I know is sacrilege to say.
No. This is what this discussion is about. Yeah.
One is the soundtrack and the sound editing. The sound editing is incredibly bad in the Snyder one. And do you remember I said earlier, I don't think he understands subtlety. We did not need Wonder Woman's fucking operatic little riff to play every single time Wonder Woman came on screen. I didn't need it. The other thing...
I thought that was done in the Joss cut as well.
I don't remember it from the Joss cut.Maybe I'm wrong. But the guy I was texting while watching it, he also didn't remember it from the Joss
operatic thing wasn't in the Joss cut, but I saw it more of as a leitmotif at that point.
Yeah?
Yeah. I know we don't have any, and this is a tough one to touch on, as we don't currently have any women on, but if I felt the women in this cut got way more to that. Like Lois Lane wasn't just a plot device. Lois Lane was a plot device in the Whedon cut, where she's brought in to calm Superman down, whereas she's at in this version, she's going to the memorial every day. She's always gets a coffee for this police officer. Her life hasn't moved on since this incident, and it's her life gets entangled with it. She isn't just a plot device. And Wonder Woman isn't just, they kind of relegated her to this sort of mum role in the Whedon cut, whereas Snyder seemed to have they weren't just there to be plot devices. They got a lot more fleshed out.
Wonder Woman is the best part of the film, in my opinion.
She even got the
black,
and a lot less. They got rid of all the upskirt stuff as well, which was in the Whedon cut. So more respectfully shot. So I think I know Whedon was a few years ago was lauded as sort of a feminist hero, wasn't he? That's all kind of been torn down.
Yeah, that's from Grace and a half. One other thing I think it did better in the Whedon cut. One of my problems with DC, and I don't know if you guys are DC comic book fans.
Graphic novels. I don't really stick to comics because they're just ongoing stories that never get any resolution.
I have too many comics.
My biggest problem with DC, and Zack Snyder's kind of getting it right, DC is much more powerful than Marvel. Fine, yeah. Justice League would crush the Avengers in a fight. Darkseid would crush Thanos. Yeah, so I've watched enough videos on it. I get it. To me, it makes them less interesting. Now, Zack Snyder's tried to combat that by making this very obvious theme of they are gods amongst men. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Marvel responded to that by, for example, Thor. Thor is a god. He's a Norse god. And Marvel kind of depowered Thor. And in the second Thor, you get that scene where Anthony Hopkins bellows, "We are not gods." Whereas in DC, they're kind of embracing that. The one thing that Joss added that I think should have stayed there, and I know people will disagree with me because a lot of people didn't like it, is the Russian family in the ending bit. Not to be done with comedy. Joss Whedon did it with comedy. But I just felt that there was no human cost to Steppenwolf's invasion of Earth. They just didn't feel in any of the fights.
We did wipe out about half the Amazonians.
But they're not human. I need men. I need mankind.
But that's what Cyborg was. Cyborg was a man. He's a man that's...
I want to remind you of the end scene of Man of Steel, where everyone's getting punched through buildings and blown up. I get what you mean though, that it doesn't. There's no grounding. If they're all gods, if everyone's special, no one's special. But also, if there's no grounding, if there's no human element to it, like obviously Thanos' thing was that if he snaps his finger, half of the universe's population will be gone. Whereas in this one, it felt almost detached from humanity because it's a lot of these godlike figures going around. But I guess in a way that makes it more claustrophobic to the heroes. It sticks with the heroes more, and it's more about their journey.
And it might be a symptom of the fact that Justice League, I mean, you know, Marvel are obviously way ahead of in terms of their film universe. They're like 26 films in now, and we're only just, as of Endgame, which I think was the 24th film, we're only just introducing the concept of multiverses, whereas DC are throwing that in quite early. So I'll give them that. It's a big ask that DC are asking of the general non-comic reading audience. And Dark's... I can't say I'm hyped for Justice League 2. I know some people are. I know some people are really excited. Do you know what's really annoying is I started to get interested in Justice League 2. Honestly, I wish he'd ended it here. You know, when they kill Steppenwolf and his head flies through the portal.
Yep.
I almost called him Thanos then.
And Granny Goodness is there.
And Darkseid says, "Prepare the armies," or whatever he says. That should have been the final scene. We didn't need the nightmare future prophecy, especially because he's done. This is a weird editing choice. You tease Deathstroke as your next villain, only to then 2 minutes later confirm he's going to join sides with Batman.
I have a feeling that Deathstroke tease was supposed to be for the Batman spin-off, and then obviously the Batman spin-off is not happening now. So,
well, I've heard it might be happening again now.
It's so up in the air these days, isn't it? With all this, because the current Batman that we're getting is the one with
Arpats.
Yeah. There is some odd, and I think there's going to be some artifacts in the film just because of what's happened over the time. Obviously, the film Shazam wasn't supposed to exist, or an Aquaman. You know, these in their 5-film plan of Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League 1 and 2, and then
Justice League 3. It was going to be a trilogy of Justice League films.
Oh, okay.
It's funny you say that. One thing, I don't know if you guys picked up on it. This is obviously something that got dropped with the Whedon. Yeah, Justice League was made before Aquaman, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously something Whedon cut. Why the fuck is Amber Heard British in this film? Why is she doing? She's doing an awful British accent. Obviously, Whedon stopped that, and then in the Aquaman solo film, I don't think she's got a British accent.
No, not that I remember.
It's bad. Her British accent is very bad. Also, sack her, damn it.
I think she already has been, hasn't she?
There is rumor that they're recasting her for Aquaman 2 with Natalie Dormer.
I thought it was supposed to be Emilia Clarke.
It's between the two of them, I think. But
okay,
Emilia Clarke's definitely the better option.
But yeah, I think like you're always going to get artifacts. That the fact of the matter is that of how much the industry sort of flip-flopped back and forth with Justice League is shit, but what about Snyder Cut and this and that, that there's always going to be little issues like that. I get why they're doing the apocalypse thing, because there's that they're teasing maybe that's how it's supposed to, like, that's going to be their end game where everything's gone wrong. This is them trying to, but
their end game is going to be Crisis on Infinite Earths, isn't it? Surely.
In a way, I think they'd do it.
But in the gap, the CW series has already done Crisis on Infinite Earths. Albeit they did it for much cheaper budget and with TV stars, and it's Alan from 2.5 Men is going around the multiverse beating up Supermen.
He goes back to Smallville.
And Smallville. Very odd.
And Farmer Clark Kent, without any powers, just punches Lex Luthor. He's like, "What did you expect?
Yeah,
even without the superpowers, I'm still a farmer."
That sounds scrappy.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
The CW show has always been fun but flawed.
Brendan Routh actually comes back as Superman.
Yes,
he plays. Yeah, he plays Ant-Man in Atom in Legends of Tomorrow.
But no, it's like I said, this cut. I don't know what you didn't like. So you didn't like the music, was it?
the music and the sound editing. Zack Snyder has that problem that Christopher Nolan has as well, where quite often the sound is pitched too high and the dialogue is pitched too low.
How are you watching it, Jamie, if you don't mind me asking?
Because we didn't have that problem on our one.
Yeah.
I usually have that problem with films.
So I had an Amazon copy that I bought from Amazon US, and I've got 7.1 surround sound headphones. That's how I watched it, and I heard everything perfectly.
Yeah, I had no problem with the sound design either. I had a feeling that.
Does anyone know why he made the choice? Because it's a very weird choice. Even in 2016, did you say you filmed this?
You would have been filming it about 2016 if it was coming out in 2017.
Even in 2016, this would have been a weird choice. Why is it in 4:3 aspect ratio?
He prefers IMAX. He prefers the IMAX resolution. So on an IMAX screen, that 4:3 would take up the entire. He likes the extra height.
Right.
So it would
film.
Yeah, it would give you the extra height, and then the width would pan out. So it's the best you can do at home without IMAX screens.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So you get
I would do want to see. I will go and see it when it is in IMAX, simply because I kind of want to experience it, the cinema feel. Because watching it as we did wasn't exactly the cinema experience. But
I do have two controversial statements I want to make.
Okay.
One of which will probably get me murdered.
I don't know where you live. Don't worry.
So this first one is an argument for another day, but I'm just going to say it because I feel like I have to, and I feel like I have to represent Smurden as well, who's not here. I'm very glad this film exists. I'm very happy for the Zack Snyder fans and the DC fans. I'm glad you've got the film you deserved. To me, there is nothing in this film that Marvel haven't done 3 times better. Right down to Steppenwolf's armor. You're right. Living armor is cool. It was also cool when they did it on the Destroyer in the first Thor film, way back in 2000 and whenever. I personally, and this is an episode we'll do it one day in the future because I know we'll have a really good debate. Because I know Benton obviously absolutely hates Marvel with a burning passion.
No, don't. Okay, first and foremost, I think that comparing DC to Marvel is part of the problem that these films have had. I think this is one of the roots of the issues. I don't hate most of Marvel. There is a lot of Marvel ones that I don't like, and I can still sit through a Marvel film and be like, I watched this, but I despise this. It's not so much it's this insidious remains of how it leaks into everything else and warps it until it's the same kind of sanded down, vacuous stuff.
So this is the thing. This is for the future episode, but I don't think it's as sanded down and vacuous as you think it is. I think it was at a certain point. I think it's getting to a point now where it's much more auteur. I actually think if Edgar Wright was to come in now, I think they'd get on really well with him because things like WandaVision are proving that they're more open to taking risks. Second controversial statement, and this statement will probably get me killed, like assassinated.
Before you jump in there, Jamie, I just want to back your point up with the switch in Marvel was actually in 2015.
With Civil War, was that 2015?
No, it was actually when Winter Soldier came out because you had that switch over it was all politics. You had that switch over from Marvel Studios from actual old school Marvel. And there was a guy in that industry who absolutely hated any changes, any risks. And when he was dropped from the head and it actually separated into its own entity, that's when you had the more risky films from 2015.
They're risky is making things neon and injecting some more humor. I don't feel like any risks have actually been taken. WandaVision is probably the first risk I feel that they've taken since the 26 films.
It is a big risk to do 3 episodes in this day and age, to do 3 black and white episodes.
But let's be real here. It's not a risk when you have $1 billion net beneath you. Zack Snyder's career hinged on this.
No, it didn't.
It did.
If
you think of the outcry for this cut to come out, and if it had been absolute dog shit, he wouldn't have worked in this studio again.
He's already got his next film lined up. His next film's coming out in a couple months.
Yes, but Army of the Dead's going on Netflix.
Yeah, well, that's the future, isn't it? Cinema's dead.
Cinema.
Second controversial statement, because this is it might actually get me killed by you two. And I think I mean this. I don't think I'm just saying it to be controversial. I don't think I'll ever watch Justice League again. However, if by some chance I do go insane and I decide to watch it again, honestly, I'm gonna watch the Whedon cut, because they're the same film to me, but the Whedon cut is the Cliff Notes version of Zack Snyder's. I can't imagine me ever I'm actually really pissed about the running time. I actually am. Benton will know from having worked with me. Running time's a big thing I've got in cinema. Your film absolutely should never be over 2 hours long, except in rare circumstances, i.e., like Das Boot, although even then I prefer the cut down version, or
Seven Samurai.
For example, Endgame. Endgame has earned it because it's wrapping up 10 years worth of story. If the first Justice League is 4 hours long, dear God, how long is the second Justice League?
Yeah, it should have been split into 2 parts, in my opinion. It should have been part 1, 2 hours, part 2, 2 hours. And
I think that's how they could have done it.
Yeah, I think they should have. I know it was copying Marvel, but I think they should have done the solo films building up to it. I think it is a big ask of people to go, hey, come watch this team up film where you don't actually know who Aquaman is. Remember, Aquaman he was like the internet's whipping boy before it came out. Like, they did a whole storyline on how bad he is in Entourage. He was constantly referenced as being the worst superhero in Big Bang Theory. They didn't know a lot of people didn't know who the Flash was. You had the TV show, but this was a different Flash. And a lot of people didn't know. So I didn't know who Cyborg was. I'd seen pictures of him, but I didn't know anything about him.
He was more popular in the Teen Titans, I believe.
Yes, he was a Teen Titan originally, which I don't know when the switch came over. I think it was in 2011 that he became a Justice League member.
No. I have been told that the best version of Cyborg is the Teen Titans version from someone who's a fan of DC.
Yeah, but, it's a big ask, and it is, and I think Marvel went about developing the characters better. I prefer the DC characters. I've always felt that there's more depth to them. That a lot of there's small things that, like, I know Superman is usually just kind of, it goes, oh, he's too powerful. But the part that's always interested me about Superman is the fact that he is so powerful and yet he is a gentle soul, and that he has that kind of, Clark Kent is his act, and he keeps up this act of being gentle and meek, and yet he's someone who can literally he can see through, like, there's one of the graphic novels where he can see like rings, halos of life around people. Like, that's just how he naturally sees. He sees colors that we can't conceive. He can see, rays coming off phones and satellites. Like, his life is so vastly different to ours, and yet he conforms to our world and not the other way around. I think Snyder's always tried to capture that, as that he is a fish out of water, and yet he is more human than all of us.
Superman is an incredibly tough character to do. It's when you've got a character who's very powerful, it's very easy to fuck them up. To get in my standard reference to Doctor Who, some writers fuck the Doctor up, because the Doctor is a character who, fair enough, he can't fly and punch through walls and stuff, but under some writers, you'd almost believe he could. One of the problems I had during the Matt Smith era was he built him as if the Doctor was like the greatest superhero in the universe, and he can, there is nothing the Doctor cannot do. His very name is the key to destroying the universe. If his name is ever said, it will undo the fabric of reality, and that's the wrong way to do it. Whereas he then course corrected under Capaldi's Doctor, and you get this, much like you've just said, where that is an interesting similarity. I didn't know that about the halos of life thing. That's just the way he sees the world. One of the things he establishes with Capaldi, the Doctor can't see age at all, because he's so unfathomable. By the time you get to Capaldi, he's billions of years old because of all the time he spends in the confession dial. He literally can't see how old people are. He goes up, there's a bit where he describes himself as looking exactly the same age as his companion, and she's like 26, and he's Peter Capaldi, and he's like 58. So it's if anyone ever does get Superman right, I will applaud that person, because he is an incredibly hard character to get. in my opinion, I mean, to be fair, I don't know enough about Aquaman, Flash, and people like that to comment. I will give you Batman. Batman is an endlessly compelling character. I think it is Batman, I would say, is the most successful superhero outside of nerds like us. Everyone knows Batman. Yeah. Everyone has seen a Batman film, and Batman will, for better or worse, will continue to be endlessly retold over and over. Because like folklore characters like Robin Hood, it's one of those stories that is so good. He's one of the villains. He's one of the heroes who not only is he incredibly compelling, but look at his rogues gallery.
Yeah.
All the best, I would argue, all the best DC villains are Batman villains.
Yeah, and Joker, Deathstroke.
Yeah, and they're all compelling.
Two-Face.
All represent different but Batman's a very psychiatric comic book. They're all different mental illnesses. I do want to throw a shout out. Actually, I don't know if you guys have seen it. Have you seen the Batman fan film that got released this week?
I've got it ready to watch in 4K because I didn't want to watch it on my phone. I wanted to watch it on my TV, but I've got it ready.
I won't spoil it. I'm not going to pretend it's perfect. It is low budget, but honestly, if they came and said, we're going to get this writer and director team and we're going to get them actually a budget and let them do a Batman film, I'd be interested to see what they do because it's not an action film because it's, like I said, it's really low budget. 90% of the film is a conversation between Batman and the Joker, but they get Batman and the Joker. Yeah. They get that relationship perfectly.
I mean, if they ever got Batfleck to do Killing Joke, if they did that right, I think that'd be fantastic. And if they got a good Joker, they need a good Joker.
See, annoyingly, they've already cast Willem Dafoe as Volko because I feel like he would be an amazing Joker.
Willem Dafoe would be an amazing Joker.
But this is the thing I mean about DC characters is that you look at the characters and there's always a little more than meets the eye, and that's what the comics were so good at, was tapping into. They're not just people in spandex punching things. And I know, obviously, like Dave would roll his eyes at this and be like, they're just superheroes. But there's something when you think about their very existence and their life, there's just something that makes them compelling. Like I said, like the fact that Superman doesn't see, or the fact that he can hear set grains of sand moving in the desert. Imagine that. Like, it's just, and Batman, of course. Yeah, and Batman, who's, obviously that he is tortured with people who, the Joker, who he physically cannot live without. The Flash, who lives so fast that everything is super slow to him. There are these sort of little quirks in their life, and then the boys. And we can't. I know I talk about it a lot, but the boys, I don't think we physically talk about this subject without bringing it up. The boys kind of takes that. This is their superheroes, but the quirks in their life are insurmountable, is kind of taken to 11. Whereas like Marvel's like, these superheroes, yeah, they have a few tragedies, but their lives are brilliant. You want to be them. They're sexy, they're amazing, they look great, and they have powers that don't get in the way of their regular lives. You look at DC.
Except the Hulk.
Yeah,
that's the one they got right.
And yet that's the one that they touch on the least. In he's the one who has, his films have done the worst.
There is a reason for that. I didn't know this till recently.
We'll come back. I'll say that like if you turn the dial at 0, is kind of Marvel saying, well, we don't really want to explore the issues of Thor, sex with Thor, because we want them to be sex symbols. And then you got kind of sitting in the middle is DC, where it's like, yeah, their lives look glamorous, but then when you look beneath, their lives are kind of riddled with these issues. And then on the 10, you've got kind of the boys, where it's like, no. If there were superheroes, they'd be pricks and they wouldn't care, and they'd be on Twitter, they'd be egocentric, megalomaniacs. And I think it's interesting to see, because obviously Marvel's gone, this is more marketable. Boys has gone, this one's more true. And then DC kind of is kind of that happy medium that kind of touches on a bit of both, because people want to be Batman because he's cool, he's rich, he's
beneath that mask is a man you do not want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to be Batman.
Whereas what's wrong with Captain America?
He's extremely racist because he was born in 1940.
He's out of
he's a man who has to live Yeah, he's a man who basically slept through his own life and wakes up in a. To be fair, I think you picked the wrong one with Captain America. You should have gone with Thor. Captain America, I think, has got pathos there. I will admit, Marvel haven't always handled it that well. One of the best examples of them not handling it well. And I'll give you this victory. I'll give you this one. This is a bad mistake Marvel made. One of the most compelling things about Iron Man is he's an alcoholic.
Yeah, they got rid of that.
And they got rid of they drift into it in Iron Man 2, which I think was just before Disney bought them.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it was. It was 2014 or 2013, I think they bought them.
Right.
But it's like Smallville. They had like there was a whole thread until I think about the 8th season where it's like despite him having a girlfriend, they'd never been physically intimate because he was scared of killing her. And it wasn't until she got powers for an episode that they could. And they caused an earthquake. But that is kind of that reality of it. Or the not so much being realistic, but adding a kind of that little dose of verisimilitude that makes it compelling. Anyway, what were you saying about earlier?
So I was going to say two things real quick. The first one was I was going to use a quote backing you up, actually. I referenced in one of our horror episodes a director called Mick Garris.
Yeah.
He made this quote about horror, but it applies to superheroes. It applies to any genre. Don't sit there and write the genre. Write a compelling drama and then add the genre elements in. And I think that applies to horror, superhero films, sci-fi, anything. Because what we respond to as humans is drama. And in terms of the Hulk thing, just a quick, it's just an interesting note, because a lot of people have said, why don't they do another solo? Because Mark Ruffalo's never gotten a solo Hulk film. And most people would agree it's the best Hulk. It's actually due to a small legal issue. Back when Marvel, before Marvel Studios existed, when they sold off all their rights, they've obviously slowly been trying to get them all back. They've bought out Fox. They've got a deal with Sony. Universal still own the rights to the Hulk, and they've got a deal where Marvel are allowed to use the Hulk when he's appearing in a group film with other heroes, but they're not allowed to do just a Hulk film without involving Universal in the production process, which so they don't do.
A similar way to Sony and Spider-Man.
Yes, but less friendly.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, even when they do try to, like the both times that they've done Hulk, granted they were outside of Marvel's purview, as it were, but even then they didn't really they're too afraid to go to the darkest possible realities of Hulk's life. And we see him in Thor Ragnarok. That eventuality isn't explored, whereas DC has always kind of been like, hey, you want to see dark, you want to see nasty, this is what it looks like. And then obviously the boys then goes one step further and goes, say, you want to see the ridiculously dark, hop on board.
See, I think the beauty of the boys is they do what Russell T Davies says, which is you write selfish characters. If you want people to be interested, because people inherently are selfish. Deep down, we like selfishness. So when you write a character, write them selfish, and you're gonna relate to them in some way. You're gonna hate them or like them.
Yeah, and then there are some sort of nice ones in there to kind of like Annie. But
even Annie has her own selfish goals. She's not completely selfless.
Yeah, and it makes them human. When we're talking about, you mentioned about sorry, Jamie, what you said has completely left me. About dramas, writing dramas. And you see that the roots of that in Justice League. It's just kind of what you wish that they'd had more time for them in previous films. But you've got the drama of his dad's been wrongfully arrested for a crime he didn't commit, and he's desperately trying to get jobs to pay to put him through school so he can try and exonerate him. You've got Cyborg, who's revived in a car accident, but he still has the drama of his dad doesn't make time for him, and his mum is kind of pulling overtime to kind of be that support figure for him, and also that he's dropping out or he's got issues in school. You've got the drama of you got Wonder Woman did she have an arc? I don't really think she had an arc in that, did she? She kind of already, her arc was sort of in Wonder Woman, and then she came in as a fully fleshed character in Justice League. I guess she still has the arc of that she lost someone 100 years ago that she knew for a week and still hasn't gotten over it, even though she got him back briefly for a few days in Wonder Woman 1984. Don't watch that film; it's terrible.
From you.
It's there is sort of those roots of drama, and then you add a little spice of superhero to it. That makes it compelling, and it did. There was lots of there was lots of little things that were narratively cyclical, like the sound waves going out at the very start when he's dying, and then the sound waves going out when he's battering Steppenwolf, as kind of both of them being signaling change, and the mother boxes being signaling change. I think Zack Snyder, you say he's Michael Bay, but he does give a lot of thought to these things, and there is themes and there is like passion and thought that goes into it, but there is also a lot of missteps that I think take away from this kind of you can't call him a genius because he blunders as much as he does good things.
He's a very human director, but I with the cyclical nature, you have it in BVS as well. You have it starting with a funeral and gunshots, and then you have it ending with a funeral and the big gunshots for Superman. But in those funerals, you have Batman becoming Batman, and then Batman evolving to a more hopeful person. Michael Bay would never be able to do that in any film that he's ever written.
I think, and you spoke about Michael Bay, Jamie, saying once that his teleprompter went off and he couldn't even talk about his own film. You could not say that about Zack Snyder.
No.
If a teleprompter went out, I bet you, first of all, you probably wouldn't have a teleprompter. I bet you he could talk for hours about his cut.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I'm seeing, so I was quite shocked actually when I saw the massive positive reception. You know, people are saying things like it's the best superhero film ever made, things like that. The majority of people I know, so I asked people to write in with feedback.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly all the feedback I've got at best is, yeah, it's fine. It's all right. So if I may just read something.
Yeah, no, please do. It's good to hear.
This comes from director Alexander Churchyard, who directed Ice Cream on the Beach and the upcoming Mosaic. And he apologizes that it's a bit rambly. I'm glad that he got to do his version, I guess, and I'm pleased for the less toxic fans, not the ones who are attacking critics who are saying bad things about the film. That's an unfortunate dark side of fandom.
Yeah, you get that everywhere. That's not unique to DC fans.
I think both versions are very flawed, so it's hard to know which is better. I'd potentially consider watching the theatrical one again because it's shorter. This one did at least have one tone, though. Actually, genuinely thought Barry was better in this, so that's the Flash. When he saves Iris and then at the end, using the Speed Force to reverse time, really liked those bits, but then I liked the Flash. Adding that dream sequence at the end was baffling, really.
Yeah.
While keeping a scene to set up Batman v Deathstroke, and then we see this dream premonition of them teaming up. Yeah, I don't know. Actually have a headache. I would prefer it if there were no more Zack Snyder helmed DC things now. Oh, and was Mira British before? That threw me, but maybe. So I got that from him.
I think it definitely hits on a point that the issues that the cut could fix, it did, but there are issues in the film that the cut couldn't fix that were problems with, say, the plot and problems with its position within the what is currently a trilogy, really. That the cut couldn't fix, and I think some people were assigning this messianic status to it, that it was going to come in from on high and transcend this to something greater than it could ever be. It wasn't. It was going to fix some plot holes, which it did. It's going to be more visually improved, which it was, and it would hopefully flesh out the characters a bit, which it did. The plot itself being quite generic, it wasn't going to save that. It was never good. It just kind of gave it a bit more of a unique spin to what was already, but that would have come out before Infinity War. So no one would be saying, oh, it's just Infinity War.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you've got, there are certain fans who can't be objective, because if you've spent the last 3 years demanding the Snyder Cut, you probably can't admit any faults in it. I have one more piece of listener feedback from former guest Tom McCarthy. He said, "Is this a better film than the Whedon version?" To quote Reverend Lovejoy, short answer yes with an if, long answer no with a but. Positives: they cut the shitty dialogue that was added for comedic effect. Batman wasn't a little bitch in this version, and Cyborg was actually a character. Barry Allen isn't constantly cracking jokes that don't land. Fight scenes are improved, and of course, I can't believe none of us mentioned this so far, no CGI mustache removal on Superman.
I think that just goes without saying.
Yeah.
Negatives. I wish I'd said this at the beginning because this is a great insult. Negatives. Steppenwolf is still what happens when you try and buy Thanos from Wish.com. Darkseid was built up for nothing. Lois Lane spends 90% of her screen time moping around. The effects are still shit. They still feature that, and I can't say this word, but it's the C word, Amber Heard. How do they explain Clark Kent is suddenly alive again? Why do you show off Deathstroke as the next potential villain and then show him in a future premonition as an ally? And why did you cast Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor? Why did it have more endings than Return of the King? Why build up sequels that no one wants? Jared Leto, and finally, so much slow motion.
I think we've touched on a few of those. I think the one about Lois Lane sort of moping a lot. I think I know it's not like when you've got a character that you love that they're just kind of when they spend the whole time, but we are seeing a character who the repercussions of losing a loved one, and they're not sitting there. I remember seeing the cross section of a film and thinking he's going to be back in 30 minutes, so cheer up. It's nice to it's not nice obviously that like the character's not doing anything interesting on the screen, but it is nice to see the repercussions of something that happens and actually seeing characters take it. Whereas there are other times where in some films, we won't name the cinematic universe, where something horrifically tragic has happened and they're cracking wise 10 minutes later. The one that comes to mind is where Thor is kind of being very quite mopey. He's in that sort of state of depression after, not going for the head. And he's like, do you know what goes through my blood? And then Rhodey's like, cheese whiz. It's like, you wouldn't be cracking jokes in this situation. You'd all be miserable.
It's why I hate the Whedon line in the Whedon cut, because Lois goes back to the planet and then she's sitting there singing with Martha, and Martha's like, and she was telling me that you're the thirstiest reporter he knew.
Yeah.
Making fun of like the sexual connotations of it, but
this one here is it's a character who, and Dave mentioned it on one of our horror episodes where he's saying that it's good to see characters that take on emotional damage from things that happen to them, as opposed to kind of like characters, the old 80s action heroes who slaughter 100 men and they're cracking wise and smoking a cigar and they're fine. I guess it's just it places her within the events of the universe and places her within the kind of the emotional
to defend, well, not defend Infinity War actually in Endgame. I actually do agree they kind of fucked Thor up in that final film. Yeah, I like the fact he shows his depression and he's got fat and everything. I don't like the fact it's just played as a joke.
Yeah, but like him being fat is the punchline, where in reality it should be he's clearly in a really dark place.
Yeah. But in some other respects, they got the tone perfectly right. It breaks my heart when Tony comes back from space and he's all thin and emaciated, and when he's saying to Cap, and he's like, "You said you'd be there and you weren't." That breaks my heart. Quick thing about Lois Lane, because I'm genuinely curious. Did either of you notice the not very subtle at all foreshadowing of what her fate is in the next film?
Oh, what? Yeah, she's good. Yeah, but that's
we see her charred corpse in one of the scenes.
That's sort of a
no. I don't mean her dying. I mean, there's a scene where she's crying.
Oh, the pregnancy test.
She's preggers.
Yes.
You say not so subtle. That was completely and utterly visual storytelling. There was not an ounce of exposition linked to it.
Yeah,
She
but it was-
opens a drawer and there's a pregnancy test. There was nothing else to
Yeah,
it.
right in the center of the frame. It wasn't.
No,
I'm
it was
sorry,
off to
but
the side. That was off to the corner. I
Yeah,
remember
what
that frame.
more? Okay, it could have been a bit more subtle, but it's
could have.
nice that she didn't. It wasn't a scene of her peeing on a stick and then going, "Oh,
Yeah.
and then saying, "I'm pregnant. It's yours. It's your baby. You're an alien, and I'm having your baby." It was showing, not telling.
I'll agree. But it was, I mean, it was so obvious that it stuck out like a sore thumb to me. And I was just like, what? And then I popped online to see if anyone else had noticed. And that's when I read that Zack Snyder has confirmed that she is indeed pregnant.
I don't think he should need to, though. I mean, that is visual storytelling. That's showing, not telling. That is
But
exactly
modern
what we want in
audiences are
films.
losing it. Then modern audiences are losing this showing, not telling, and it's why people hated Batman v Superman, because Batman v Superman does so much showing rather than telling that you've really got to watch it a few times before you can actually appreciate it.
Podcast trying to defend Batman v Superman.
I will, because I've seen it so many times and it grows on me. It
The
grows on me every time.
The ultimate is one of those again where the Ultimate Edition, bloated as it was, I think because of a lot of studio meddling, but it's one of those ones that really did need the entire picture. And it's one of those ones again where the risks that he took were not outweighed by the risks, like the risks that paid off were outweighed by the risks that didn't pay off, namely the biggest one of all, the Martha twist.
Why did you say that name?
It's obviously the second that got into kind of the internet echo chamber of this is a bad line, that was it. The film was doomed.
It wasn't as fun. Do any of you know the movie reviewer Chris Stuckman?
No.
He did a rewrite of Batman v Superman, and one of the funniest lines from his rewrite was Batman and Superman talking to each other, and Batman goes, "Tell that to Zod's snap neck."
Oh god, that's a bad line.
That was
there's a lot of like what was some other Tom's criticisms?
Well, just the sheer fact that Amber Heard is in the film, but
yeah, that's a big one. But once again, that footage was already shot.
Slow-mo, which we've already talked about.
Yep, too much.
He agrees with me about the Deathstroke thing. Why are you putting it in and then confirming he's good?
Now, the reason why that happened was when Zack was making his final. This was going to be the swan song. He didn't, he was not writing it to potentially get more sequels. So he put that in there because he just wanted to show off Batman and the Joker meeting and having this end like final crisis sort of squad. So in the actual film we would have got theatrically, that scene wouldn't have been in there.
Yeah.
The moment where Lex Luthor tells Deathstroke Bruce Wayne's name, I think all three of us while we were watching it were like, oh fuck, didn't see that coming.
Yep.
That's kind of one of those big moments, isn't it, where
because you haven't explored that story. You have not explored a story where a Batman villain knows his identity and how they can like destroy that.
Didn't Dark Knight Rises was kind of Bane knew it already, I guess, but
it wasn't. They didn't do a lot with it, and I know Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins sort of did with Destruction of the Manor.
But the other one as well is Steppenwolf kind of being a I don't think he's never supposed to be Thanos. He isn't supposed to be the big bad. He was someone who was desperately seeking redemption in the eye of his master. He wasn't fleshed out. His goal was pretty two-dimensional in just, I want to conquer this planet because Daddy Darkseid doesn't like me no more.
That's nephew Darkseid. Thank you very much. He's the uncle in the relationship.
But it was very much, I think I do 100% see what Tom means there of just kind of he was, and it's the same issue that the Whedon cut had, in that he was just someone who's saying mother a lot. There wasn't really much to. They do give him some, like,
he had more depth in the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, but it wasn't enough. But I don't think they were ever going to save. It's not like Steppenwolf was going to get an arc where it turns out he had a mum called Martha too. Let's be real.
Genuine question. Obviously, I think we'll all agree we prefer the look of Steppenwolf in this version.
Yes.
Oh god, yeah, he looks so much more visually pleasing.
Do we prefer him being beheaded by Wonder Woman, or the kind of ironic death he got in Joss Whedon, where his own soldiers turn on him?
I didn't like the fear subplot that he put in there. In honesty,
I would have liked it if it had been built up better. I'm always a fan of villains being hoisted on their own petard, as they say.
Yeah.
That's always good. But Joss Whedon did it very clumsily. You get one mention at the beginning that they're attracted to fear, and then no other mention of it, no build up that Steppenwolf is feeling fear until out of nowhere they're just like, oh, by the way, it literally in the Whedon cut, it literally felt like Whedon was going, oh shit, we've almost hit 2 hours. Oh fuck,
we'll kill him.
I think it was more the studio was probably like, Steppenwolf's too scary. We can't have Wonder Woman decapitate him. Children might go watch this 12 film if we have a decapitation scene. So how are we going to work this out? Let's have him killed by these things because of fear, and then he works backwards, I think.
Yeah, but I like the fact that they're sending a message to Darkseid. They're literally sending his servant back to him, but without a head. Is quite a, I don't know. It was a cool moment in the film, but I also I do like kind of the nature of a villain getting their comeuppance in a way that isn't just general.
Disney do that very well. Like if you look at the very Disney Renaissance films, all of the villains usually are betrayed by something they've built up. Like in Lion King, Scar's killed by the hyenas. He's not killed by the hero.
The Pit of Souls.
Yep. Frollo falls off the tower into the fire that he created.
Because there's a lot of
to go back to films doing that. That's one. The whole hoisted on your own petard thing. That is one thing Marvel do very, very well. Nearly every Avengers villain dies that way. You know, Loki's plan is to unleash the Hulk, and he gets absolutely annihilated by the Hulk.
Yeah.
Ultron gets killed by Vision, which is the body he's created. Thanos gets snapped out of existence with the Infinity Gauntlet. It's something they do very well, to a point where actually I kind of need Marvel to stop doing it now.
It's how you keep your heroes from being heroes.
Yeah.
If they don't.
In WandaVision, has everyone seen WandaVision now? Who's going to watch it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They literally do the same thing. Scarlet Witch beats Agatha by using the rune trick that Agatha used to her earlier in the series. And it is a thing where actually Marvel do it so well that they kind of need to stop now, because it's getting a bit like, oh, you mean you've stolen a piece of Iron Man armor? Oh, so that's how you're going to die then? Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of their films end with the villain fighting their own, just a villainous version of themselves.
That's the antithesis of themselves, isn't it?
Whereas kind of DC, you'd be like, why the hell is Lex Luthor up against Superman? But that's because
I've never understood why Lex Luthor is Superman's arch nemesis.
Yeah, because he is a man who believes he's a god due to his power, literally facing a literal god with power.
Fair enough.
That's the humanity versus God,
and he's smart enough to beat a man who's that powerful sometimes.
Yeah.
In a way, wouldn't Lex Luthor be a great Batman villain?
He is sometimes in kind of some of the Justice League things. He has dealt. They have clashed before, and they've teamed up before to kill Superman. In one of the comics,
in their business like brains, I'd say.
Yeah, he gave Batman some kryptonite to kill Superman, and then Batman got the living shit kicked out of him. But that's neither here nor there. It's one of Tom's criticisms was Lex Luthor. He's not Lex Luthor. He's an Alex Luthor, isn't he? Yeah. Who is a different Luthor. Who's a version of the Lex Luthor from Earth 3, I believe.
He also criticised the CGI, which I'm half and half. Some of the CGI is very good. Darkseid looks very good. I always feel like it should be pronounced Darkseid, but it's Darkseid. Darkseid looked very good. I think for the most part, Steppenwolf looked very good. There was one scene, and I can't remember what it was. It was literally one shot where it almost looked like they'd not textured him properly. The only really bad CGI I noticed
was it Cyborg when it zooms in really close to his face and he looks like it's very clearly not him.
It was two of them. It was Cyborg.
Yeah.
And it's also, when they're being told the backstory of Darkseid's first invasion of Earth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Green Lantern in that looked fucking atrocious.
Oh,
I didn't get a good look at that. I didn't focus on that. I don't really notice. If I notice bad CGI, it's really bad because I'm really bad at spotting it. But There's the bit where it kind of like zooms in on Cyborg's face when he's in kind of the machine matrix, and it genuinely did not look like him.
No, no, I
But
agree.
I mean, I don't know. I can't. I don't have an explanation for that. I think that's just
timing. They're having to.
Yeah, and there's a lot of CGI in the film. Something's going to fall through the cracks eventually, isn't it?
To be fair, they've got the same excuse everyone else has got, which is they've had to try and make this new cut during the pandemic, meaning not as many people could be in work in the render farms and things like that.
Yeah.
You haven't got someone overseeing that rendering either. They've got to like be trusting of each other.
I kind of think any film that's been made in the last sort of 18 months, probably we're going to have to be a little bit lenient on.
Give us
only if it's a CG heavy film, I'd say.
Because like Wonder Woman's 1984's CGI was atrocious. And also things like the fact that she started flying without armor and then landed in armor, where there was very clearly a plot moment that had just been kind of wiped from the record and no one saw any problem with it in the team.
So do we think, two questions related. One, do you think, given that it's doing very well, HBO Max's servers crashed and everything apparently with people trying to watch it, do we think, one, that Warner Brothers will crawl back to Zack Snyder and say, come and finish what you started? And two, because Tom said he doesn't want to, no, Alex said he doesn't want to see any more Zack Snyder DC projects. Do you want to see more Zack Snyder DC, or would you prefer someone else to come in now?
I think Warner Brothers, they are very money centric. All these big companies, they don't have something called pride. They don't have dignity. They see numbers. And if this number's big and this number's small, they go for the big number. And if Zack is drawing in big numbers and everyone else isn't, they're going to go to him with their tail between their legs. Do I want to see more of him? Yes, asterisks. I think he needs a no man. He needs an assistant director. He needs someone to say that works, that doesn't. Because if he's given the reins, he takes risks that some pay off, some don't. Jesse Eisenberg being Lex Luthor being one that doesn't quite pay off.
Extra question, sorry, that I'm adding in, because I don't actually know the terms of the legal agreement, but some people are under the impression that HBO now have some kind of claim to this, so that any future Justice League might actually not be cinematic, but will be like this again, where it comes out as this massive project where it's joint between Warner Brothers and HBO. Do we think that would help or hinder?
I mean, as long as they stop trying to be the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it isn't the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's something entirely different. Because it's completely warped from what it started as, what it is now, and it's been in flux for so long that it'd be nice if they just concreted down, this is what we are doing because this works. And it's nice to see a positive reaction, because a positive reaction means that they know where to go from here. They got some positive reaction to Aquaman, and they're like, right, let's do one-off stories. We'll do Shazam. We'll do Wonder Woman. We'll do Wonder Woman 1984. That one failed. Shit, where do we go now? They were tail spinning, and now they've got this big response. I don't know where to go with that. I'm just saying it's nice that they're like, this is what we're doing now. We know where we want to get to. Zack Snyder has kind of put us back on track. And if there's going to be little side spinning adventures with the Suicide Squad, the new Suicide Squad, and the Batman film, yeah, that's cool. And then we just have these enormous ones that kind of these central focal points that kind of bring it all back together. It's not good.
No, go on.
It's never going to be the MCU, because the universe, I think, changes too much between each film. Whereas Marvel Cinematic, except for the snapping, they can kind of all coexist at once. Nothing too major happens in one that will completely, alter everything else. Whereas if that final crisis thing happens, you can't then have Ant-Man and the Wasp in the middle, can you? That's it. That's the end. Yeah. I think it's nice to see something where it's not, you get the feeling with a lot of Disney films that things can get crazy in the middle, but everything has to be back where it was at the end.
Yeah, toys are back in the box.
Yeah. I felt that with like Star Wars. They're like, Chewbacca's dead, but no, he's not.
I hated
C-3PO's
that
dead.
scene so
No, he's
much.
not.
I
Yeah,
hate-
that they can't commit to anything because everything needs to be back where it was for the next one. Whereas if Batman v Superman ended with Superman dying, like stuff like that is
Yeah.
uh
What about you, Charlie? Do you think Zack Snyder, Warner Brothers will go back to Snyder now?
If they do, I think they might give him the reins of Wonder Woman. Seeing how he treated Wonder Woman in this film, it was very obvious he gets the character. He knows how to treat her right because whoever wrote and directed Wonder Woman 1984, they didn't get her right.
The same person who did the first one, Patty Jenkins.
But on the first film, Zack Snyder was an EP. So I feel like his influence, and you can definitely see it from the No Man's Land scene, his influence was still there with Wonder Woman 1980, the original Wonder Woman.
Which is interesting because historically, one of the things Snyder has been, it's quite funny, him and Whedon have done a flip because one of the things that Snyder was often criticized on in his older films is not knowing how to do, look, his films are very masculine. Look at like 300 and stuff. And even Sucker Punch, the girls are objects of fantasy. He's always been accused of not knowing how to do women characters. Meanwhile, Joss Whedon, who's been friend to feminists everywhere, suddenly is public enemy number one, and Zack Snyder's here doing as good Wonder Woman.
Well, that's what I find hilarious is in Sucker Punch, they're kind of strong female characters in the way that Quentin Tarantino does strong female characters, and you see it with Watchmen as well. Silk Spectre's not really, he's going from the graphic novel, which is pretty accurate to it, but she's not a sex symbol. She's a character that wants to be a hero, and she's still strong and holds her own, especially in the director's cut, because there's a lot of scenes that are cut there, but she holds her own with our men.
And what about HBO? Do you think HBO will also be involved in future projects? And do you think this is a good way to release these films instead of going cinema, especially if they're going to be 4 or 5 hours long? Do you think it's better to go this way in the future?
Honesty, because I'm such a cinephile, I believe cinema is the way to experience movies. But David Lynch says it the best. It's a group experience. You go to the cinema with people. It's why I love doing it with Benton and our friend Harry. I wasn't watching Justice League on my own. I was watching it, and you had the same thing where you were texting someone. We don't like movies to be just ourselves. We sort of like that group experience because we're all feeling the same thing.
Yeah. I've got another question I'd like to ask the panel.
Just to finish my point just before that,
Sorry.
If HBO were to do it, I would say if they funnel their money in so they can get, exclusive first things, that's fine. But as long as they keep cinema strong and actually release it in the cinema after the fact, I'll happily go see it. I'll happily watch it at home and then go to watch it at the cinema.
Well, I think there's going to be, no one knows for certain today at the minute because we're still actually in the pandemic. But I think there's going to be some kind of weird deal, I think, where films are going to come out both at the cinema and on streaming. And I think what you'll see, personally, I think we will see an end to big cinema chains like Odeon. I think we'll see a return, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think we'll see a return to smaller, more artsy cinemas, which might be good because it might mean, I love Marvel, but you know what was really annoying when Endgame came out? If you didn't want to see Endgame, you couldn't go to the cinema because it was on every single
screen.
We might see other things getting a chance, and you get that choice. People like us who enjoy the cinema, definitely the best way to experience a film is the cinema, in my opinion.
That's what I was saying. I think that there's this cut is quite it's quite affirming that it's like a war horn to what could be a big neon light to the studios saying stop fucking with the cuts. It's Suicide Squad, that it was edited by a trailer house and it was terrible. And people, you look at Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition fixed some of the glaring issues with it. There are so many lots of Zack Snyder films, but hopefully this is a big sign of let a director breathe, let a vision breathe. And I know you don't like Zack Snyder's visions, but if this if this is the big cry, this is the return to directors being given some creative control in big projects and not just indie films, that would be something really nice to see.
Yeah. And I do still think, even though I don't personally like it, I still think he deserves, as a filmmaker, to have his vision out there. I have already seen people calling new on Twitter now. It's hashtag release the Ayer cut for Suicide Squad. So that's starting now.
But the weird thing with that one's complete. The Ayer cut doesn't even need VFX shots. Ayer cut is just literally a recut. That's it. It's done.
It's. I mean, there was a ton of reshoots, wasn't there? And the whole thing was edited by a trailer house. And you think the studio would sit there and think, that's not going to work, is it? You know, if we take something like this, completely chop it up and completely warp it, and then suddenly they're shocked. They're so shocked when the film does terribly that they completely alter any future plans for the studio. It's like, wow, when we completely meddle with a very, 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 very volatile environment, you know, it's like the Amazon, you know, you take it's just one bug, but it isn't. It's a very, very, very volatile atmosphere. And they're going into something that needs all the parts to work. And they're just chucking whatever the hell they want. Change the director. You know, we don't need that scene, this scene, that scene. Get a trailer house to edit it. That definitely can't do anything wrong to it.
The irony is the Suicide Squad made money. That the irony is that it should have failed, but Suicide Squad, because of its neon and its marketing, it actually made money back. And that's the saddest thing.
Everyone who saw it hated it. That's the thing. Its marketing is what sold it, which of course it did. To be fair, there should have been no way Suicide Squad failed. One, it's got a new Joker in it. Everyone loves the Joker equals money.
Harley Quinn. How many people are cosplaying Harley Quinn?
Is it the first film version of Harley Quinn?
Yes, it is.
She's also hot as fuck in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a film, I think the first superhero film, where the lead characters are the villains. Which is just an interesting concept. That's always an interesting, hey, come and watch these villains, you know. I tell you what I think DC needs. They need a Kevin Feige. If you look at the way Marvel was set up, yes, you had a lead director, which was Joss Whedon, but you also had a lead producer who fair enough, say whatever you want about Marvel, but what you can't deny, Kevin Feige is a genuine Marvel Comics fan.
Yes.
He's a genuine film fan. I don't know if you know this, Benton, but Kevin Feige started as a production assistant back on the first X-Men film.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think he's been, the way he's organized and wrangled what is essentially the most expensive TV show of all time, and to stick to his guns and to kind of recover from any, you know, because there are some little snags, but in all, it's kind of gone off without a hitch.
Yeah,
I mean, they've been quite lucky in that none of their main actors have died or gone to jail or anything like that. They've managed to avoid some major issues.
Until now, yeah. Chadwick Boseman.
Wait, which one?
Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And what I'm saying, though, is he cares about the content. I always feel, I could be wrong, but do you not get the feeling that, ignore Snyder, but from Warner Brothers, they
don't give a shit. Warner Brothers has never cared.
No, there is no care.
Who cares, you know?
No, Zack Snyder very clearly cares and has so much so that the films and his version of Batman feels like fan fiction is probably because he's probably written fan fiction of Batman at some point in his life. He clearly loves the characters, but has his own interpretation of them. He isn't just parroting what we already know,
which is healthy because then it gives the adaptation more weight.
Yeah,
you know,
and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
If I want Death of Superman, I can read the comic.
Yeah.
Or I can watch the Batman v Superman The Dark Knight Rises adaptation animation.
Yeah.
But if I want to see a new interpretation, I can't wait for it. I can't wait to see an adaptation of these characters.
I agree with that. I'm actually going to bring Doctor Who up again because Doctor Who is the perfect example of this because of regeneration. There have been 13 different interpretations of the Doctor. Yeah, they don't all land for everyone. I am not a fan of the current Doctor at all. But there are some people who this is their Doctor and they will always remember this version. For me, it's always going to be Eccleston will always be my first, and I love Eccleston, but my ideal Doctor is Peter Capaldi. You know what I mean? The first person I picture. For other people, it's David Tennant. James Bond's the same. Some people love Sean Connery, can't stand Roger Moore. Some people love Roger Moore, can't stand Pierce Brosnan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Daniel Craig got a lot of flack, I remember.
I hate Daniel Craig. I hate Daniel Craig as James Bond. I can't stand him. Can't wait for him to be gone because he doesn't have the suaveness that Bond needs, in my opinion. And Batman's a good example, and any superhero is a good example of this. Some people complained when Batfleck got the job, and when it come out, one of the first things I heard was, he's killing people. Why the fuck's he killing people? That's because people were so used to the previous interpretation, Christian Bale's one, where the whole big thing was, that is the one rule you do not break. That is the line. But this is a Batman who has been pushed to the edge by the Joker, by all the other villains he's fought over the years. So yeah, I do think there is a toxic thing in fandoms where people don't like change.
Yeah,
but
people are like, this is my, and that's ironic, obviously, because the whole film is about change. There's a whole chapter, isn't it, called the Mother of Change or something? Because the boxes are called the Change or something like that. But I mean, first of all, Batman killed in his first iteration, the Golden Age one. Dropped motherfuckers with a pulse.
He also killed his parents.
Did he?
I mean, if he didn't leave the opera, the little fucking whiny child.
Yeah. But I mean, he once hung someone from the Batplane. So when people go, "Yeah, Batman doesn't kill," like, no. If you are that much, if you're going to be that much of a toxic fan that you are going to stand in the way of progress, then at least fucking read up on the source material first. But
I have one more question for the panel, but it's a bit more of just a fun question. So I'm going to leave it till everyone's made their final.
But I think the problem is that he tried to helm he tried to helm the DCEU, which people were expecting was just take the DC comics, put them on the film with some sexy film stars. It all looks good. It all looks nice. Happy days, like the Marvel ones. The problem is Zack Snyder was never going to do that. He came in and he changed things because he sees the characters a little differently to how they are in action comics, how they are in detective comics, how they are in everything. And I think he took risks and he made some changes that didn't work. He made some changes that did. And the problem was that it's such a shift from what people were expecting or what people wanted that I think it made too many waves. And now kind of people are coming around to these waves and going, hey, change is good.
Well, from what I remember reading, and this was like very early on, I think when Man of Steel came out, the original Warner Brothers plan, Warner Brothers wanted Nolan to sort of be an overseer, which is why you see Nolan being an EP on a lot of things. And then with Bale being the established Batman, with Cavill's Superman, and then that sort of being their cinematic universe. But Bale, was like, well, I've done Batman now. Nolan was like, I want to do other things. So Warner Brothers was like,
yeah.
Shit.
I think people wanted, a lot of what the fans wanted was Dark Knight to go into a cinematic universe. Yeah. But you didn't get that. I'm sorry, that's not what you got. You got
Dark Knight doesn't work. If you put Dark Knight into a cinematic, if you put Dark Knight in a world where superheroes exist, Dark Knight fails to work anymore.
But that, I think, in just going on the actual thing, is that he's been Batman for 20 years where nothing supernatural has happened. And then there's suddenly this very jarring shift where aliens coming to Earth changed everything. You could have made it work. You could have made it work of, this was normal. My life, this isn't normal now. But obviously
you could interpret if you ignore the fact it's a change of actor, you could choose to believe that Batfleck is an older version of Christian Bale's Batman.
Yeah, except no Robin. Kind of. There is a Robin in Dark Knight.
Batman Begins and then Batman The Dark Knight and then watch Man of Steel.
Yeah. And then like it's a version of him that's pushed so far that he starts killing people. And people go, Batman doesn't kill. But this one does. And you're watching this film, so
he killed Two-Face in The Dark Knight.
Oh yeah, so he did.
He literally killed Two-Face. He pushed him off. Yeah.
Which is why I always say what people forget about Dark Knight. You know what's so great about Dark Knight? Joker wins.
Yeah.
The Joker wins because Batman has to kill to save that child. Batman falls just like the Joker wanted him to. Quick fun fact, common mistake a lot of people make because DC did retcon it out of the continuity, but everyone goes on Man of Steel's the first DCEU film. No, Green Lantern was. And DC were like, oh, no, people didn't like that at all. Get rid of that.
Is it really?
I think Jamie is right.
Coming out, the Ryan Reynolds one, they kept referring to it as being the DCEU.
Imagine starting your cinematic universe with your least known character.
It's because it was meant to.
That's what MCU did. Iron Man was very unknown.
Well, it was meant to start with Batman. Then Nolan said no. So then they said Superman. But Man of Steel took longer to develop than they thought it was going to.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Green Lantern got finished. They started both at sort of the same time, but Green Lantern got finished first. And desperate to catch up to Marvel, because by that time I think Marvel had done Avengers and had become.
They were a year out. They were a year out from Avengers coming out.
Right.
I think Green Lantern was 2011, Avengers was 2012.
Oh,
but so you can see what I mean, though, when I said that Marvel's they were lucky in a sense that everything's gone off without a hitch. Obviously, recent events notwithstanding, but they kind of had Robert Downey Jr. never turned around at any point when I'm done with this. Goodbye.
He did.
He's calling me.
But you're right. Again, your point about some risks pay off, some don't. Hiring RDJ was a huge risk that could have backfired terribly. Because remember, pre-Iron Man, like his career was dead.
He was the last film he was in was Underdog, I think. He was like
imagine the MCU if we'd have got to like Avengers 2, and then all of a sudden the news come out, RDJ's back on drugs.
Yeah. No, there's so many things that could have, or literally things that you hear of series and stuff where an actor loves their motorbike and they get in a motorbike accident and that's it. Suddenly the writers have to write around this huge character arc, or when the character, like in if you watch Parks and Rec, so many of the three of the main characters leave because the actors wanted to leave at some point, and you can see the writers go, "Fuck, how do we write around this?"
Just started Parks and Rec yesterday.
First two seasons, and then suddenly it finds its footing.
Yeah, I'm not enjoying it at the minute.
No, you won't. Trust me. You hit season 3, and suddenly it clicks. Some of season 2 is quite good, but it's the literally three main actors leave, 2 of them in very close proximity to each other because they want to go into other projects.
Oh, I could tell one's going to leave. I can call it now. I think the actor's name is Paul Schneider. I think.
Yes.
Guarantee he leaves.
He does leave.
So boring. He just doesn't.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do with him, but you could just see the writers scramble to fix it. And DC had the same problem. They couldn't get off the ground. They keep trying. Nolan and Bale didn't want to. Green Lantern. Huge.
The strongest part about Green Lantern was Mark Strong. He was the best Sinestro. I sort of wish that came over.
And then they try Man of Steel, and obviously Man of Steel was quite divisive. You know, they've had lots and lots of issues of getting it off the ground. I think if they got the ball rolling, if it had started with Dark Knight, we wouldn't be talking about this because there wouldn't have been a Snyder Cut and a Joss Cut. Things would have just gone.
Plan, maybe.
Yeah.
Ultimately, do we think Snyder has saved Justice League?
Well, if we talk about it as a film, if we talk about Justice League, the film itself, what we got with the Joss Cut was a bastardization of what the film was originally. So he brought back the vision. Maybe if he hadn't added those actual bits at the end, it would have been a more actual accessible film because it probably would have been about 3.5 hours to 3 hours long. But yeah, I honestly think what the bare bones were, it has saved it because it's a more enjoyable art piece.
I have to admit, if you'd have asked me Thursday, as in I'd seen it and I hadn't had time to see anyone else's reaction, I would have said no, because to me, I don't think it's that much better. But I am forced to admit, having seen the reaction from a lot of people, it's inarguable. Maybe he's not saved Justice League as a film. I do think he's saved the DCEU. I think it would have been scrapped. Or just done side stories, like you said, Benton, just Aquaman. But I think because of how this has gone down, I think we may see, whether it's Snyder or not, I think Warner Brothers will push ahead with an interconnected universe again.
Yeah. I think he did I would say he did save the Justice League from the Joss Whedon version, as in like he has restored it to what it was supposed to be, and it is an improvement on the Joss Whedon cut. So at least in a sense, he has saved it from itself. He is, in my opinion, he has produced a good film. I enjoyed it, and I will come back to it. Has he saved the DCEU? Time will tell. Is all I'll say. Is time will tell.
Okay. So can I ask my just for fun question now?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So I'd just like you to tell me if there is a DCU property, a DC property line that hasn't been announced yet that you'd like to see.
Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come.
Is that's not the one where Superman goes to Russia, is it? That's Red Sun.
That is Red Sun, yeah.
Kingdom Come?
Kingdom Come was one that was drawn by the great Alex Ross, I believe, and it was written, or was it?
Mark Waid wrote it, Alex Ross wrote it.
There you go. And it's basically set 20, 30 odd years in the future. Superman is retired. He like lives by himself in like a fake farm. Basically what's happened is, what is it? The Joker nuked. No. I'm confusing them. Basically, a whole new wave of metahumans has come along. There are so many superheroes that they are literally, there's like crimes are like eradicated like that, and with zero restraint. The new wave of metahumans are out of control and just mow down any criminal or anyone they think is a criminal with a pulse. And the infighting that these metahumans has is causing even more and more and more damage until eventually it causes a disaster. But the big thing is that these new metahumans, they kill the Joker, and they find themselves in better public standing than Superman, Batman, and all that old lot, because that looks as if they're dealing with things until a big disaster happens where one of these new metahumans, who's like nuclear powered, accidentally blows up a city and kills a bunch of them. So there's kind of this issue of metahumans are just running wild everywhere, trying to fight crimes. Some of them are causing crimes. Some of them are just being aggressors for the sake of it. And Superman comes back to kind of try and unite everyone. But in doing so, has also kind of dregs up all the old people to come back, and basically turns Earth into a killing field between.
Yeah,
it isn't good and bad, which is what I like. It is just kind of shades of grey with tons of kind of old issues, new issues all coming in at once. And it ends, I don't want to, I would recommend reading it, but it's
I might read it actually. It sounds a bit like a DC equivalent to Civil War, not the film. Film Civil War.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It sort of is, except obviously Civil War was the culmination of a whole. This graphic novel exists in its own kind of mini universe.
Okay. Can I just buy it on Amazon then?
Of course. But it's told through the person it's told through is this priest who's basically taken. He is told that he is to be the observer of the end of the world, and he's basically watching the world spiral into destruction at the hands of people who think they're doing. It is a really, really good story.
I might read that one.
I would highly recommend. There's another one, Superman Birthright, which is the one where they look at him and he's like, that's the one where he can see like the halos of people, and they really like, it's someone who really gets Superman, and they really make him very, like, they get the gawky Clark Kent, and it's the first time that he's ever friends with Luthor. They grow up together. And like there's a really good relationship between them. And I thought if that was what Man of Steel was, if Man of Steel was just Superman Birthright, I think it would have been flawless.
And would you like to know who wrote Birthright?
Was that Jeff Johns?
It was the same guy that wrote Kingdom Come.
Really?
It was Mark Waid.
Fucking hell, he gets Superman. Why hasn't he written a film? But there's the line in it where he's like, he can see he's like wrestling with a lion, because obviously he's not going to get hurt by it, and he doesn't intend to hurt the lion. It starts with him in Africa. He's doing like a report on like civil rights, and obviously he can't get involved but he's trying to help without being Superman. And he's like wrestling with a lion, and then he's like sleeping on the lion. That he's like sleeping next to the lion afterwards, but he can see the halo of the lion. And he mentions about how it's the most beautiful thing in the world, and he could never imagine extinguishing it because it's just so beautiful to him that's why he would never take a life. And then you look at Man of Steel, where he snaps Zod's neck so hard that it does a 360. That one, like Superman killing, is one that I always thought I'd never see, whereas Batman killing, I always thought like that just kind of seems like the natural evolution of Batman.
Yes, it does. Who did you say wrote it, Charlie?
Mark
Waid. He's been in the comic industry for so long. He's done Punisher, I think. He's done Daredevil.
Yeah.
He's a really good writer.
And I don't read, I'm not a big comic book guy, despite liking comic book films. I don't read regular comics because
me neither.
You know me, I'm a bit OCD. I would drive myself insane if I missed an issue. So I tend to just read the odd big storyline here and there.
That's what I'm saying. These are graphic novels. These two I've described are graphic novels. I've tried to get into the comics a few times, and every time I look at something and it's like, oh, but this is Action Comics like 1019, and you need this, and this one. And also it crosses over with the universe from this, and this one after Infinite Crisis. Like I can't, there's no confirmed end either. So I'm never going to get closure.
Yeah.
But whereas these graphic novels are nice little contained stories that are usually they're quite thought provoking as well, despite being about people in spandex.
What about you, Charlie?
I mean, I started my comics with Green Lantern. Green Lantern was my first DC comic that I sort of really regularly followed, and that was when Darkest Night and Brightest Day were around. And Darkest Night was just after Final Crisis, so you had all of the dead heroes from then rising up again with the Black Lantern. So it was almost like Marvel Zombies for DC, but it was more continuity based, whereas Marvel Zombies was its own thing.
Yeah.
And I really liked that because it built up onto this fact that Grant Morrison, who's a great comic writer from Britain, it was like the culminator, the follow on from him and Jeff Johns from what they'd interlaced from years and years ago. And it then followed on, and it was there was an adventure with Batman going through time called The Return of Bruce Wayne. So when the Omega Beams hit Batman, it sent him back through time to the beginning of time, and then he had to relive like the evolution of Batman as this tribal figure.
Okay.
Up until he could then return to the modern day. And during that time, you also had Dick Grayson taking up the mantle. So if they would adapt like a Batman story with that, where you've got Batman and Robin, you've got the mantle being taken over, or the Brightest Day storyline, or even Final Crisis would work. But a buddy cop with Green Lantern would probably be my favorite thing that they could possibly do, because they had Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz as a buddy cop in the New 52. No, Rebirth. It was during Rebirth, but that was such a good dynamic they had going on.
Yeah,
that I would love to see that come to screen, because it's almost screaming for it.
Yeah,
be good to see Harley and Ivy. That's always a fun combo.
Well, they were going to do Gotham City Sirens.
Yeah, and they did Birds of Prey. That obviously didn't do too well.
No,
I think you've both picked ones that actually could happen. I'm fully prepared to admit the one I'm going to pick will not happen. She's not a popular enough character, and it definitely wouldn't. This is probably as Marvel as DC would get.
Is it Squirrel Girl?
No, Squirrel Girl's Marvel, isn't she?
She is. Yeah, the unbeatable Squirrel Girl.
So one of the few trade paperbacks I do own, and I love it dearly because it's not very single. I've already said I don't like Kryptonians. I think they're too powerful. The only way to do them, I think, that works is to make them funny. I've read this book about 50 times. I would like to see them do Power Girl.
I mean, that is a tough one.
So what I would do don't do her in the DC continuity, do it as its own separate film, in Earth 2 or whatever. The specific version of Power Girl I want them to do is, I can't be asked to go get the book, but it's the version that was done by Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner. It's very humorous. It doesn't fit with Zack Snyder's universe at all. It's very much comedy. She breaks the fourth wall a lot. They make the boob window a big joke. Like there are literally villains who she beats because they're too busy staring at her tits, and she's just like, "Excuse me, up here." They look up, and then she punches them in the face,
and then punches through their skull because she's a Kryptonian.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. So the two specific storylines I'd like them to do is either there is one, because they'll never do this. Actually, you know what? Zack Snyder might do this with Superman because he's kind of done it in Justice League, to be fair. There is a storyline called Power Trip, I think, where she goes evil, but she doesn't know she's gone evil. She is seeing enemies, but they're not there. The villain is a guy who can create hallucinations, and she ends up with everyone hating her publicly because she's going around fucking laser eyeing through fucking buildings and shit because he's tricking her. Or the one that's more likely to get made because they've got Harley Quinn and they really like Harley Quinn, and Margot Robbie, I think, would do it. The same two writers, Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, they do the Harley Quinn comic book now, and they did a 6-issue limited series where she teams up with Power Girl, and it's very funny. It's a very weird thing. It's lots of like hopping through the multiverse to different times, and the setup is it's that not very good partnership where Power Girl's trying to take Harley Quinn to prison or something like that.
Yeah.
And she's constantly having to stop. Harley's solution to every problem is let's kill everyone. And she's having to constantly be like, no, we can't do that. But then there is this heartwarming moment where they meet the Joker, and the Joker obviously abuses Harley, and Power Girl like teaches Harley to stand up to the Joker, sort of thing.
There's Harley Quinn is probably my favorite line in any comic ever, where she teams up with Arrow. And Arrow's like, welcome to the Arrow Cave. And she's like, why don't you call it the Quiver? And there's just a pause. That's actually so much better.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite moment from a comic.
Yeah, don't do it as canon, because I know if they're ever going to do Kara canon, they'll just do Supergirl. Fine. Yeah. But
DC's good at one-off stories.
Yeah, I've always loved Power Girl. I don't know why. Maybe it probably is the.
I think I know why, Jamie.
I was like 14 when I discovered it, but I only like that version of her written by those two writers because she's genuinely. It's a very funny book. It's called the book is called Power Trip, and it's about that thick, and I do recommend it.
I've never really looked into her.
All my ones will be Superman ones. Year One Batman, another good one. But a sitcom on Krypton would be hilarious.
Do you know what would be interesting? As a one-off thing, you couldn't do a whole series.
Yeah.
Imagine a sitcom in Arkham Asylum.
Zaz.
This thing, you pick one of the villains to be like the weedy member. Like every sitcom's got that character that the other ones all bully, like Raj in Big Bang Theory. You pick one to be that, and I've just got this image of at the end, Killer Croc eats them.
I would like to see them do Killing Joke in
live action,
but the issue with the Killing Joke is it's really short, and they tried to do it in the animated version, and it was really bad because they don't forget the Batgirl part. They did an extra 45 minutes with Batgirl where she basically gets with Batman.
She shags Bruce Wayne,
and it's really obviously it doesn't really link to the Killing Joke. I think if you were to combine the Killing Joke with the Red Hood, you could definitely get a story out of that where he kills Jason Todd at the start, and then Batman's hunting him the entire way through, and then right at the very end catches him, and they do that amazing scene where Joker tells him a joke, and it's the first time that Batman laughs. If you've read the comic, there's the two streams of laughter, one coming out from Batman and one coming out from Joker, and Batman reaches for him. It looks like he's laughing so hard that he's reaching for him, and then Joker's laugh just suddenly stops. It's supposed to be like, hey, did Batman kill him? Did he not?
Because at the end of the day, Batman's realized that he will always be dancing this dance. That's the beauty of it.
The joke is literally about people who are doomed to repeat the cycle over and over. And the last frame of the panel of the comic is a ray of light being covered by a puddle raining in, and the last ray of light is gone. Whereas which I always thought that was meant to mean that he did kill him. I mean, there's a lot of debate whether he did or not, but I always thought an actual live action film of the Killing Joke would be with Batfleck and maybe Mark Hamill as the Joker, like a live action Mark Hamill Joker. He is the best Joker we've ever had, voice wise. I'm sorry, Heath Ledger, and I do like Joaquin's as well, but the voice. If you think of the Joker voice, it's
Mark Hamill.
I go straight to Hamill.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with I love Heath Ledger as the Joker, but I will admit one problem with Heath Ledger as the Joker is everyone since has tried to imitate Heath Ledger as the Joker and do that. It was a bold choice he made, and I'll never not respect him for it. But he did that kind of sort of slow, sort of, you want to know how I got these scars? You know, that sort of drawl.
I'm the Joker, baby.
You know what I thought?
We are nerds at the end of the day. We do love this stuff with a passion. I think hopefully we aren't zealots, which is kind of a good thing. I know you kind of came in here saying that we were going to be salivating over Justice League, and I hope you think that we're not just kind of being blind zealots about it.
No, I mean the length does suffer it. There is a suffering to that length, because to show it to a general audience,
I would never claim it's perfect. I never claim that it's a vindication of like, you know, it belongs in the annals. It belongs in a time capsule along with Citizen Kane and all that. But I think it was definitely a noticeable improvement on what was a very shoddy film.
To give you guys some credit, you've actually mellowed me on Justice League a little bit, because I was prepared. Don't get me wrong, I'm never going to watch it again.
Even if we invite you to the IMAX.
Yeah, come with us to IMAX.
I do want to see an IMAX film at some point, but I was prepared to come on here tonight and just be like, I hope Zack Snyder dies, sort of thing. Which I don't, obviously. I don't. Yeah. That is an example of how over the top I can be. Because it's funny, you said the thing about we're not zealots, and that we're not, and that's good, I think. But you know, sometimes, I'm not going to lie, I think we'd get a bigger audience.
Oh yeah, I think if we came in here and Charlie and I are going, it's the best fucking film ever made, and how dare they not let Zack show his vision until now, and you're there like, he's a hack. I'm sure it would be somewhat entertaining to watch, but this podcast is about discussions.
It wouldn't be true to ourselves either.
Exactly.
Because no one person is an extreme. I don't think people are extreme zealots. It's a persona they put on to bring in, like you said, the views. It's not a true reflection of
also, I think a lot of people who push even harder than they need to about how much they love something is because they're in denial about something they don't like about it. Like if you were ironclad that there is nothing wrong with the film, you wouldn't get angry if someone insulted them, because you know in your heart of heart that they're wrong. If you're getting that angry about it, then they must be hitting a nerve. You know, what else is there to talk about? I think we've definitely covered. I think, is there anything you want to add? Any addendums? I think I've said everything I want to say.
I mean, I think, as you said, we're nerds, we're film fans. I think we need to stop ourselves because the episode has reached the length it needs to be. Because the three of us, I think, could sit here until 4 a.m. talking about superhero.
I'd be happy to do that if I wasn't editing the podcast.
I'm going to do the topping cut right now. I want a 4-hour-long podcast.
Which doesn't get released until like 4 years later.
People screaming out, release the topping cuts.
But that guest that came on and actually defended Snyder, get his cut.
I'll just say again, I'll thank Charlie for coming on for the 3rd time. It's always a pleasure when Charlie's on. Feel free to come back whenever you want. No, seriously, you're a very good guest to have on. So feel free to come back whenever you fancy. We are still promoting Haunted, releasing new casting notices. So please add Impala Films on Facebook and on YouTube, because it's getting close, man. It's getting so close to the actual. We actually have a read through tomorrow, which will actually be yesterday by the time you listen to this on Monday. And I'm panicking because I decided to rewrite a 120-page script with less than 48 hours to go. And I'm only about 40 pages in. So, yay.
So thank you for joining us tonight, and good night.